They say that Muhammad copied Quran from the Bible, Hasha. What do you say about this?
We've got a lot of things to say about that. Not only that, the Christians have a lot to say too. Actually, the Christians talking helps our case, because Allah says in the Quran that woe to those who change the scriptures with their own hands and say this is from Allah. This.
Yeah, he lied again. He just misquoted Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 79. Chapter 2, verse 79, in its context, is talking about a group of Jews. And guys, don't take my word for it. In chapter 2, verse 78, 79, it says there was a group of Jews, the people of the book, but in that context, according to the commentators, these are Jews, who did not know the book except from hearsay, meaning they never read the book. They only knew the book secondhand, what someone told them was in the book. And then it says about those Jews, woe to those Jews who did not know the book, who then wrote a book at that time and passed it off as revelation. So yes, the Quran is acknowledging that at the time of Muhammad, there were some Jews who wrote a book and tried to pass it off and make some money off of it. But that same Quran says those Jews did not know the book. They didn't have no knowledge of the book. They only knew it from secondhand information. He ipso facto assumes this is referring to the Bible. No, it's not. It's most likely referring to the traditions of Jews that were codified, which they passed off as revelation. Because in the same chapter, I'm going to give you a slew of verses because you want to just do a sum up. You don't want to be here for 5 hours because you have a life, unlike me. I want to give the verses that people can then stop this or slow this down and write it down. Chapter 2, verses 40 to 44 of the Quran. Chapter 2, verse 89. Chapter 2, verse 91. Chapter 2, verse 101. And I got to include chapter 2, verse 97 as well, because it talks about Gabriel coming down, bringing the Quran to Muhammad's heart as a confirmation, which was before it. So chapter 2, 89, chapter 2, 91, chapter 2, 97, chapter 2, 101, chapter 2, verse 121. In all of these verses, it says, one of the proofs that the Quran is from the God of the Jews and Christians is that the Quran confirms what is already with the Jews at that time, already with the Christians. It says, this confirms what is already with you. Now, let me give you some other surahs. I just give you the references. You can write them down. Chapter 3, verses 3 to 4 of the Quran. Chapter 3, verses 113 and 114. Chapter 3, verse 199. Chapter 4, verse 47. Chapter 5, verse 66 and 68. 5, 66, 68. Chapter 10, verse 37. Chapter 10, verse 94. Chapter 12, verse 111. Chapter 46, verse 12 and 30. All of which say, I'm going to sum them up, that the Quran confirms what is between Muhammad's hands, meaning whatever book he had access to. And it then mentions the Torah and the Gospels being some of the books that he had access to at that time. And he confirms them as true and valid, uncorrupt. And it says not all the people of the book are alike, because there's a group of them that would not sell the verses of Allah for miserable gain, but recite the book the way it's supposed to be recited and fear Allah, and even supposedly believe in what Allah gave Muhammad. And it says that the Jews and Christians are nothing unless they observe the Torah and the Gospel and all the other revelation given to them through their prophets. And that if I want to know whether Muhammad is true, to then test him in light of the book given to the people of the book, the Jews and Christians. So when we take what the Quran teaches as a whole, the Quran goes out of its way to say, whatever books, whatever scriptures the Jews and Christians had at that time of Muhammad, those books are confirmed by the Quran to be uncorrupt, perfectly preserved, and they are the words of Allah to be used to live by and judge Muhammad's revelation. So what is this guy talking?
But Sam, those books that Muhammad had in his time, the Gospel and the Torah, we don't have them anymore, do we?
Well, this is where the Muslims wish that would be true, because we have manuscripts of the Old Testament books and the New Testament writings. Before, during, after the time of Muhammad, they're identical to what we have today. We even found copies of the Old Testament books that were discovered in 1947, Dead Sea Scrolls in Jerusalem. The only book they haven't found yet is Esther. Some of these books are fragmentary, but some are nearly complete, produced 200 years before the time of Christ. So we know what the scriptures were that Jesus had access to, because this is important. So now I'm going to give you other verses. Chapter 3, verses 48 and 50. 3, 48 and 50. Chapter 5, verses 46 and 47. And chapter 61, verse 6 state that Jesus confirmed, and his gospel confirmed, the Torah and the writings between his hands. Meaning whatever scriptures were there that Jesus had access to, he was sent to confirm, and his gospel confirmed those scriptures are the uncorrupt, perfectly preserved words of God. So when did the corruption take place? So if the Bible is corrupt, contrary to what he said, the Quran is a lie. Because what he said was, if the Bible isn't corrupt, the Quran is a lie because the Quran says the Bible's corrupt. No, the Quran says the Bible is uncorrupt. So if the Bible is corrupt, the Quran is a lie. But here's where he buries himself. Since the Quran says the Bible is uncorrupt, he must argue with us the Bible we have is the uncorrupt revelation, because that's the only revelation the Jews and Christians had at the time of Muhammad and at the time of Jesus. But that still buries the Quran because the Quran contradicts the very Bible it says is uncorrupt. Burial either way.